Good afternoon, my name is Roland. I am a business analyst at Confero Technologies. Welcome to the presentation of our risk management system. Today, I will demonstrate how our product can effectively identify, assess, and manage the risks of your company. Our product is called RiskMaster. We developed it on the basis of Creatio. Creatio is one of the world leaders in low-code, no-code platforms in the field of business process automation and CRM. Every year, they hold leading positions in the major global rankings. Our product RiskMaster is designed for companies of any size, from the smallest businesses to large holdings with complex ownership structures. We developed our product to systematize the work with operational risks and audits of your company. RiskMaster allows you to consolidate all necessary actions for working with risks and audits in one place. You will be able to both assess and record all risk events, conduct investigations, and maintain all documentation related to internal and external audits. Let's start the demonstration with the business object section. A business object is the unit of business that requires assessment. These can be both business processes and structural units of your company. We offer a division into 4 categories. These are business processes, products, IT systems, and suppliers. There can be any number of these categories. You can either completely abandon them or add your own additional 10 categories. Let's consider the category of IT systems and take the well-known IT system Internet Bank to look at the business object card and see what it represents. Inside the business object card, all analytics, metrics, and comprehensive, detailed, and relevant essential information are gathered to help the person responsible for this business object monitor all the necessary information in one place. For example, in the first section, Analytics, the metric needed for daily analytics. Next, we see a list of subordinate business objects. If such a hierarchy exists in the case of the Internet Bank, we indeed have subordinate business objects. This is a back-office system, an Android mobile application, iOS, and a notification service. Next, we see the protocols for preventive actions. These are the actions that we plan in advance and perform with a certain frequency. As we can see, we have 4 protocols. Each has its own period. Some actions need to be performed every day, while others need to be done quarterly. It is also possible to create actions that need to be performed with a frequency of once a week, once a year, or once a month. Next tab is RCSA. RCSA is an abbreviation for Risk and Control Self-Assessment. This is the place where we will store all the information about the assessment of this business object. There will be a list with absolutely all evaluations, and at any moment you will be able to access it and find the evaluation for any year or any period. And we will see up-to-date information. In this example, we have 2 assessments, one archived and one active. I suggest we go to the active section and see what information is stored here. We see the main information filled in and the risk assessment section, where the risks that have been evaluated and their assessments are added. If we go directly into the record of the risk itself, we will see how the assessment takes place. We add the risk and, in accordance with the Risk and Control Self-Assessment methodology, evaluate the initial risk. We select categories, obtain the risk level, and proceed to the residual risk section. Here we have the opportunity to create mitigating actions. After implementing the mitigating actions, we can assess the residual risk, which is generally always lower than the initial risk. Thus, we add all the risks that relate to this business object and perform both the assessment of the initial risk and the residual risk. Adding everyone who participated in this risk assessment. This information is stored with us and applied to this business object as long as it has the status active. After we create a new assessment, the previous assessment is automatically deactivated, and the latest entry becomes active. Next, we have a section with the relations of our business object with other business objects in the system. The connection to risk cases, that is, to processes, can include investigations of operational incidents, audit recommendations, and complex risk assessments. All these connections can be found in this section. In the Documents section, we connect our business object with all the necessary documentation that is stored directly in RiskMaster. Or in the Attachments section, we simply add the physical files that we need. The next section, Audit, is standard for any entity. Here we record information about the creator, who created it at what time and who made the last changes to this object. And the last tab, feed, is an internal social network where you can leave comments and respond to them. The next section is the risk catalog. The risk catalog is the place where you store the structure of your company's operational risks. From this location, it is possible to store the structure of several companies at once. For example, if you work in a holding company, there are several subsidiaries, but the risks are managed directly by one department. It will be convenient for them to create a structure right from here involving several companies and working in one place. In our out-of-the-box solution, we use the classical Basel structure, where we have 3 levels, and all records for all risks are already sorted automatically. If you are adding a new risk, be sure to specify its second level, and then it will appear in the correct place accordingly. As an example, we can take the risk card, such as IT system failures. Earlier, I showed you the business object card, which summarized all the information regarding the business object. In this situation, it is a risk card that summarizes all the information regarding the risk. The purpose of these cards is very similar, so that the person responsible, in this case for the risk, can access the risk card and find all the information they need to control in one place. Here we see both the classification of risk and, again, the preventive actions that relate to this risk. Previously, we saw it from the perspective of the business object. Here we see from the perspective of risk all the preventive actions where this risk was noted. Next, we see all the RCSA risk and control self-assessment matrices, that is, all the matrices in which we use this risk for evaluation. We have previously observed the internet bank, and we also see the internet bank in this list. But this risk is popular. It has also been used in the assessment of other business objects, and here we see a complete list of business objects. And again, the metrics section, where we collect the necessary analytics, KPIs, which can be easily customized to meet the needs of your company. Next, there is a tab with relations to other business objects and risk cases. As I mentioned earlier, these could be investigations, assessments of other risks, or audit recommendations. And then there are 3 standard tabs that I previously demonstrated in the business object. They will be consistent across all RiskMaster objects. These are the documents where we store all documents, auditing, where we log information about creation and modification, and feed. This is the internal social network. Now we move on to the RCSA section. Earlier, I had already shown you the RCSA matrices in the context of business object or in the context of a specific risk. A separate section for RCSA has been created for employees who specifically track RCSA across the entire company. This is indeed the place where it is extremely convenient to filter and monitor and keep track of the expiration of the matrices. It is very easy to create filters and track, for example, which assessments will end this month or for which the assessment deadline has already passed. We can also filter by performer, by status, and by business object. From one place, you can access the evaluation of any business object in the system. Let's go to the Preventive Protocols section. This is the place where we create preventive actions. Plan our activities in advance to reduce the likelihood of a risk arising in the future. Let's take a card from one of the preventive protocols and examine it in detail. Let's take, for example, penetration testing. Here we specify the responsible person, indicate the frequency of how often we need to perform it, state the status of this activity, and can choose what kind of activity will be created. This is a risk case, meaning it is a process with stages, where each stage has its own responsible person or an activity, which is simply a regular action, a one-step task that needs to be completed for reporting. We also note all business objects that are related to this preventive activity, and we identify the risks that it affects. In the Related Risk Cases section, we can already see all the processes that have been formed based on the regulations we specified. Once a quarter, a process was initiated, for which Emily was responsible, and it was specifically a risk case, meaning it was a process with a defined set of steps and responsible parties. Returning, we see that 3 such processes have already been initiated. If the first part of our presentation was dedicated to things we can plan in advance, then the second part will relate more to everyday work. That is, what one has to face on a daily basis every day. The first section is called Incidents. This is where we record alerts. This is not a classical understanding of an operational incident. Rather, it is more of an alert, events, signals that we receive, and by evaluating them, we can begin an investigation. How can incidents occur? There are three types. The first method is simply through the system, where an employee creates a new incident and fills in all the necessary information. The second approach is that we define a specific email address, for example, risk@confero.tech, and all emails that arrive at this address will automatically be registered as incidents, which will subsequently be processed directly by the employee of the risk management department, who will decide whether this is indeed an incident that requires further investigation or simply unclassifiable information. And the third type is integration with a third-party system. For example, if you are using an IT monitoring system, then we can make the integration, and if any of these systems stops working, we automatically receive an incident related to the integration. We also register it here, and you can combine them and conduct further investigation. For clarity, let's take the card of one incident and examine what information is stored in the incident card using it as an example. As you can see, the process is quite clearly outlined here. It is simple and consists of 3 steps, which we need for the initial assessment of this information. The responsible employee assesses whether they have enough information to either close the incident as unclassifiable information or to conduct an investigation. If there is not enough information, additional tasks can be created, for example, to provide the administrator with the log of a certain system or to send an email for clarification of information, and also the email, and the response will be automatically and seamlessly attached to this incident and stored. For example, such as, if we see that there is enough information, we can click a button to create a risk case, that is an investigation, or we can close it without creating an investigation. A risk case has already been created for this incident, meaning the process is in place, and we will immediately proceed to it to see how this works. That is, we have obtained initial information. We realized that we need a more in-depth investigation and that this could indeed be an operational incident. Above, you can see a more complex structure of stages. Stages can be easily added or removed, depending on the requirements and the process occurring in your company. At each stage, a responsible person can be appointed in advance. This can be either a specific individual or one of the departments or structural units of your company. At a certain stage, all necessary information is filled out. On the Processing Info tab, we see all the main information that we fill out regarding our investigation. We also specify financial information about losses, and we can add information in different currencies. At the bottom, we will see the consolidated amount in the currency that is our primary one. Next, we see all the attached incidents. In our situation, an investigation was initiated based on a single incident. However, there are cases where multiple investigations can be created from one incident that are thematically similar, or where 10 incidents indicate a single investigation just reported by different users. Then we connect all the incidents in this section and see that the basis for creating this investigation was the given list of incidents. Next, we can specify corrective actions that will help mitigate the consequences of the operational incident that occurred. We can record notes and additional details at certain stages. Next, in Relations, we specify the connections with all other objects in the CRM, which can include business objects. Thus, we add the additional risks that are potentially associated with this event, as well as companies or individuals. We can also add other risk cases, meaning other processes. For example, 2 investigations can be linked to each other. There is also the possibility to create additional tasks, send emails, and add risk documents that relate to this investigation. The Classification tab is created for classifying incidents. It generally aligns with the requirements of your regulator, which is why we left quite a bit of free space on the classification tab, so that we can add information directly from your regulator about which fields are necessary in the final report that you will be submitting. And our standard 3 tabs are Documents for creating documents, Audit for logging information about the creation and modification of fields, and Feed, an internal social network for comments. Thus, we have moved from the incident section to risk cases. The investigation process that I showed already pertains to the section on risk cases. In addition to investigating an operational incident, it is also possible to create any process. We also use it for audit recommendations, for preventive actions, and for complex risk assessments when multiple departments are involved, as well as for assessing the risks and potential challenges of a new product before its launch. The following 2 sections are created for the work of auditors. The first section contains all the information about the audit plans and assignments, meaning we have created a 2-level structure. We create an audit plan, and within the audit plan we create assignments. For example, let's take the ISO 9001 audit plan. What do we see inside the plan? We see all the summary information about the tasks. Here we see all the steps of the audit, and we are currently at the second to last step. And here is a list of all the audit tasks that are created, and within each audit task, the audit is already working, recording its observations, deficiencies, and recommendations. We will also provide a list of the participants in the audit, additional comments, and emails that were sent during the audit. For clarity, we can go into one of the tasks, for example, the first task, which involves the audit of regulatory documents. We see the auditor's notes with sections that he has already reviewed, participants, sent emails, and additional tasks. And in the audit findings section, we can clearly see what the auditor decided to document, which may include deficiencies and recommendations, any things that he has recorded, which must also assess the responsibility for this business object, are either the responsibility for the business process, for the IT system, for the area where an event has been recorded. Let's consider the example of this audit finding, meaning the auditor noted that there is no current organizational structure in the procedure. He indicated the responsibility for this business object, provided his recommendation after the auditor filled in all this information. He moved it to the object owner review stage. Accordingly, the person responsible for this business object received a notification and reviewed the information, which was recorded by the auditor, who added their comment and moved it to the audit review stage because the responsible party cannot directly close it. The final decision still rests with the auditor. If the auditor agrees with the information provided and with the decision made by the person responsible for the business object, that is, he has the option to choose a solution, he accepts the risk, and sees no point in creating a further process for improvement. Either he chooses the decision that improvements are necessary, and then, when the auditor agrees with his decision, it is changed to the status closed. The audit recommendation process is automatically commenced in a systematic manner, which must be carried out for the responsible business object. Here we move on and see a whole process that was initiated based on the audit finding that we see here in connection. And this is the place, in this particular location, where the audit finding needs to be thoroughly addressed within the promised time frame, as per the agreed upon schedule. Once again, we see the steps laid out, with responsibilities assigned at each step. Here we can add all the corrective actions that need to be taken to address the audit finding or the recommendation made by the auditor. We carry out all activities, add notes at the stages, go through all the steps, and thus implement the audit recommendation. The audit finding section is designed as a single place where all auditor remarks can be monitored, controlled, along with their status and responsible parties, such as managers. Previously, we saw an audit finding within one of the audit plans, and here is where we can conveniently filter, create folders, and again search for those audit findings that have not been completed on time or that need to be addressed within this month, allowing us to monitor everything from one place Next is the section on risk documents. This is the place where you can store all documentation related to risks and audits. By saving the document here, you do not need to add the file each time in every location. You can simply establish a link with this business object. Let's take a card of one of the documents that were added for clarity. Here we see the basic information about the dates when this document was created and until what year it is valid. In the attachment, we are adding the physical document itself. Thus, we store all the information in one place and easily link it with other business objects. The last section is activities. In many of our sections, I have shown that we have activities. Activities are simply tasks that can be assigned within any object. They can be tasks for a business object, tasks related to risk, or tasks within the context of an incident investigation. And again, this is the place where we can monitor and see all the activities of a specific employee, which have been completed on time, which are yet to be completed, or which have already expired. This was the last section I wanted to demonstrate to you today. Thank you for your attention. We would be happy to receive any comments from you. We are constantly improving our product to ensure it meets the expectations of our clients as much as possible.